Hi friends, welcome to my Cozy Crafty Cabin. My name is Rayanne. Today is day 11 of my 12 Days of Christmas in July crafty series, but as you know, I'm a few days late posting this video as it's going up on August 3rd, so thank you for patiently waiting for me to finish up my last two videos for the series. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 11 different fun fold style cards. All these are very easy. Many of these designs were inspired by cards I came across on Pinterest, and I just added my own twist. And then some I just came up with myself. Once I had made a few, it just really got me inspired, and it was fun to play around a bit and just try to come up with some new ideas, or new to me at least. So I used papers for my Winnie the Pooh Christmas 6x6 mega pad and my Hello Christmas 12x12 collection kit from Cartabella, both of which you can purchase from Echo Park's website. And for one of them, I did use a sheet from one of my old Hot Buy paper pads from Michaels. So I'll quickly show you on camera how to put together each of these 11 different fun fold style cards and give you all the measurements you'll need to make some yourself. So first is a simple gatefold style card. For this card, to make your base, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 11 by 4 1/4 inches. So perfect for your 8.5 by 11 cardstock. Just cut it in half on the 8.5 inch side. And then you will score it at 2 3/4 inches on both sides, or both ends, so like the left and right side on the 11-inch side. And then you will fold on those score lines and you'll get this gatefold style A2 size card. So then you just need 4 pieces of pattern paper that measure 2 3/8 by 4 inches. These will all get glued down to those like left and right panels on the front and inside of the card. And lastly, you just need a 3 by 4 cut apart to use as your sentiment. And I like to place mine in the center on the front of the card, and then I add foam tape to just the left side of the cut apart and glue it down to that left front panel. So super easy, but I think just a really fun kind of like twist to your standard A2 size card. I'll be showing the 11 different cards just in the order that I made them, but at the end of the video, I'll give you a closer look at all the cards and I'll try to rank them from my least favorite to most favorite. So like from 11 to 1 or 11th to 1st. The second card is another simple gatefold style card, but top folding. So for this card, to make your base, you'll need a piece of paper that measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches. So perfect again for your 8.5 by 11 cardstock. You'll just cut it in half on the 11-inch side. But I ended up using a piece of double-sided pattern paper from the Hello Christmas collection for this one. And you will score it at 2 1/8 inches at both ends on the 8.5 inch side. So when you fold on those score lines, you will get this gatefold style A2 size card. So then I use a 4 by 4 cut apart for my card front, but I end up trimming it down a little bit. And then I add a white mat to the inside that measures 4.5 by 3 1/4. And I believe I take off 1/4 inch on the top and bottom sides of my 4 by 4 cut apart, and then I round the corners before I glue it to the card front. So I also use foam tape, but just be sure you're only adding your glue to the top half that's going to adhere to that top panel and not the bottom, so that you're able to open the card nicely. But that's all for this one, just another simple kind of twist to your standard A2 size card. The third card is another gatefold style card, but with a fun twist. So as you'll see, I actually made a lot of variations of a gatefold style card. So for this card, to make your base, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 11 by 4¼ inches. And on the 11-inch side, you're going to score at 2 3/4 on both ends so that you have a gatefold style A2 size cardigan. Now you'll need 4 pieces of pattern paper that measure 2½ by 4. These will get glued down to the left and right panels on the front and inside of the card. And you'll also need a piece that measures 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And we do something fun with this piece, and it's going to get glued down to the inside, like middle section of the card. So what we're going to do is create a Christmas tree cutout with this larger piece. So I start by folding my paper in half on the 5 1/4 side, and then along that folded edge, I trace out like half of a Christmas tree shape, and then I do my best cutting this out with some scissors. I really needed to, like, I should have used some like smaller detail scissors, but I'm not sure where mine are. But once that's cut out, I then just glue everything down, and then I end up using the little Christmas tree for the front of my card. But if I were to make this card again, I would glue the Christmas tree to some cardstock first, like a rectangular piece of cardstock, and then glue that to the card, rather than just the like tree itself. The tree is just a little like delicate, and it has that crease, you know, down the middle too from when we folded the paper. So I think it would just be a little bit cleaner if I had like a map basically behind the tree. But then I forgot to stamp a sentiment inside the card as well, and that's what I would do too. So I would add a little like sentiment inside the card where you have that tree outline. But yeah, just another gatefold style cardigan, but I think it's just so cute with the Christmas tree cut out. So the fourth card is a buckle style card, I think is what it's called. For this card, to make your base, you'll need a piece of cardstock that measures 6½ by 5½ inches. And on the 6½ inch side, you're going to score at 4 1/4 inches, or 2 1/4 inches is probably more accurate. So that when you fold your paper, you will have an A2 size card, but with just this like 2 1/4 wide left panel on the front of your card. So I actually initially just cut my paper to 8½ by 5½ inches, to like you normally would for an A2 size card, and then I just cut a 2-inch wide piece off the front of the card. So you get this piece that measures 2 by 5½ inches, and then you're left with your 6½ by 5½ card base. So you will also need a piece that measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches for the inside mat, and a double-sided piece of paper that measures 4 by 5½ inches, which will get glued to the back of that front left panel to fill out the rest of our card front. And that 2 by 5½ inch piece we removed from the original card base, that will get glued to the inside of the card, and it acts as like a sort of buckle. And lastly, I also punched a 2-inch circle to embellish the front of the card. I fold it in half. I cut out a little like Christmas tree shape to make a cute embellishment for the front of the card. Now when you go to glue down that 4 by 5½ inch piece of double-sided paper, what I like to do is just add adhesive to the back of that like left front panel, and then I line up our 4 by 5½ inch piece with like the right edge and bottom edge of the card base, and then I fold that left panel over so that it's, you know, it's nice and straight, but just be careful to not go too close to that score line on the card base, because you want to leave a gap. I messed up and I went a tiny bit too close to the score line, because that piece is only 4 inches wide, while the card front is going to be 4 1/4 inches wide. So like you want to leave a, you know, a 1/4 inch gap basically. I hope that makes sense. So the 5th card is an easel card with a twist. For this card, to make the card base, you will need a piece of paper that measures 8.5 by 4 1/4 inches. And I think double-sided paper works best if you have it. So fold your paper in half on the 8.5 inch side, and you'll have this 4 1/4 square card base. Now you'll open your card and you're going to take that front, you know, part of your card, or the left side, and you're going to fold it diagonally in half. So like pulling that bottom left corner towards the top right corner of that left square. And I think this is called a side twist easel card or something like that. So now I used a 3 1/4 cut apart to embellish the front of my card, but I think a 3 by 3 cut apart or sentiment would work really great. Just be sure to only add adhesive to that bottom right, like triangle part of your cut apart or sentiment. So only where it's gonna touch that like bottom right triangle section of the card front, I mean. And I used foam tape for mine. And for the inside sentiment, the most important part is to have it popped up on some foam tape. So you don't want it flat. It needs to be raised off the paper so that you can tuck your cover behind it. And the sentiment I ended up using, or the sentiment, yeah, I made, ended up measuring about 2 3/4 inches by 1 3/8 inches roughly. And you just want to place it inside your card down at like an angle, and just make sure it's not like hanging over the edges of the inside of the card, if that makes any sense. But yeah, just another like, just a different kind of style easel card that's really, really quick and easy. The 6th card is a Scenic top folding card where it opens at the middle. So for this card, to make the card base, you're going to need a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 4 1/4 inches, a mat that measures 5 1/4 by 4 inches, another piece that measures 3 by 5, which you will score at 4 inches or 1 inch, either way. You just want this piece to be the same color cardstock as your mat piece. And then you will need a white mat for the inside that measures 2 3/4 by 3 3/4. And lastly, you will cut a piece, and ideally some kind of like Scenic piece of pattern paper that measures 5 by 3 3/4 inches, which you will then divide into 3 sections by cutting at 1 inch on both ends of the 5 inch side, so that you're left with 2 pieces that measure 1 by 3 3/4 which are the left and right sides, and then one piece that measures 3 by 3 3/4, which will be that middle section. So basically, when we glue this all together, you'll have this like scenic cover with the middle section being a top folding card that opens up. Now, if I were to make this style card again, I think I would adjust my measurements though, so that those left and right pieces are 3/4 inches wide rather than 1 inch wide. And then you would have like a more noticeable like space between the sections. I hope that makes sense. The 7th card is a present style card. So for this card, to make the card base, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and another piece that measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches in a different color. And then for your pattern paper, you will need a piece that measures 4 by 2, 5 by 2, and 6 by 2 inches. And you're going to fold all of those pieces in half on the long sides. So I use double-sided paper, so I need to make some mats for the insides of these, but ignore these initial measurements because I later realized I need to make some adjustments to these. Now you can absolutely use single-sided paper for these pieces, and then you won't need to like cut any additional mats. But basically, we're going to stack these so that they look like presents, and you will alternate how each piece opens up. So for mine, like I have the bottom present opens up on the right side, the middle one opens up on the left side, and then the top one opens on the right side again. So you just need to add adhesive to the backs of each present, and they will overlap each other just a little bit. So that's why I ended up needing to adjust my mat sizes. And then I ended up gluing my mats like on the parts where like the presents are overlapping, but you could totally glue them to like the other side, so then you don't have to worry about having to adjust your mat sizes. Actually, I don't know if that made any sense. Listen, it's late. But once everything is glued down, I then add some stamp sentiments inside each present, and I tie a ribbon around the middle present, and I think this card turned out so cute. You can always write on the back of the card base as well if you wanted to add like a little handwritten message. So the 8th card is a bookmark pocket card. So for this card, to make the card base, you're going to need a piece of paper that measures 11 by 5.5 inches. I use double-sided scrapbook paper, which I think works really nice for this card in particular. On the 11-inch side, you're going to score at 4 1/4, 8 1/2, and 10 5/8. And you will fold your paper so that you have an A2 size card, but with this pocket in the front. So that extra piece gets folded like back over the card front, and then you'll fold under that like 3-inch piece that kind of becomes a tab that we'll glue down and make our pocket. So yeah, I add adhesive to that tab, and then it becomes a 2 1/8 inch wide pocket, which is perfect because that's where we will tuck in our bookmark that's 2 inches wide. So I add a 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 inch mat to the inside. I use a small sentiment on the cover, and then for the bookmark, I took a piece of 2 by 10 inches of the same pattern paper for the card base, and I just folded it in half on the 10-inch side so that you have a 2 by 5 bookmark. And all I do is just punch a hole on the top of the bookmark. I add some ribbon. Now for this front pocket, all you need to do is trim off a little bit of the top, but at an angle. So basically, we're going to cut off a triangle piece at the top of this pocket. Now I don't measure this, I just line my paper so that the top right score line is at the top of my trimmer, and then the edge of my paper is at the bottom. So like your far left edge is at the bottom, and then you can cut out a triangle. And I just add adhesive, to the 3-inch tab and glue it down so you have your pocket. And this pocket, of course, it still is open at the bottom, but I really don't think it's an issue. Like the bookmark stays in it fine. It doesn't try to slide out or anything. But I love this card, and I definitely see myself making more of this style for sure. This paper, though, is just so pretty and does all the work for you. You can keep your embellishments just very minimal, and I love that. The 9th card is a gift card or like cash pocket card. So for this card, for the card base, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and you'll score it at 3 and 6 1/4 inches on the 8.5 inch side. And then you will need two pieces that measure 5 1/4 by 2 inches, but I actually only end up using one of these, and I leave the other space blank to serve as like a writing space rather than adding the other mat. So whatever you prefer. You might use one or you might use two. But then you will also need a piece that measures 6 by 2 1/4 inches. So I first take that 6-inch long piece, and that's going to cover our inside panel, so that bottom panel, and I center it the best I can, and then I just fold over the edges that hang over, and then I add adhesive to those tabs that we created by folding over the paper, and I glue those to the base. So now we have our pocket. Now this is great if you want to include like some cash or a gift card. I then glue down one of the 5 1/4 long pieces to the front or like the top panel, and I decide not to use the other one for the inside top panel. I just leave that blank for like writing space, and then I go back and forth on which piece I want to use for my cover, and I end up deciding on like the poo piece where it looks like he's kind of thinking, because I thought I could use this thinking of you at Christmas stamp sentiment, and that would just be like really cute. So that's what I did. So another just very simple card. This one is great again for gift cards or gifting cash, and it's a little smaller than an A2 size card. It's 5.5 by 3 1/4 inches, but you could totally still use an A2 size envelope to mail it if you wanted to, or you know those smaller envelopes, I forget what size like they're called, but they're the smaller like standard mailing envelopes, if you know what I mean, at least in the US. Those are the perfect size for these actually. The 10th card is an envelope shaped card. So for this card, to make the base, you will need a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and you'll score on the 8.5 inch side at 3 and 6 1/4 inches. You will also need a white mat that measures 3 3/4 by 2 inches, and you'll also need an additional mat for the inside of the card, but ignore these initial measurements because I realized later that I need to make some adjustments. So we're going to turn this card into like an envelope shaped card base. So to help me make my cuts on that like top panel when you fold the card, I make a small score mark in the middle of the bottom edge, which is at 2 3/4 inches. And then I make a score mark that is 2 inches tall from the bottom edge of the flap along both the left and right side. So hopefully you can kind of, it was a little bit hard to see on camera, my little score marks that I made, but hopefully you see what I mean. So after I make those score marks, I then use those to help guide me when I place my paper in the trimmer, to make those angle cuts on the left and right sides so that you get that envelope flap shape. Now, once we have our envelope-shaped card base made, I then glue down the mats and embellish the cards. So I first changed my inside mat to 4.5 by 4.5 inches. But then when I went to fold up my card, the mat was kind of like bubbling up. I don't know like the proper term, but it wasn't laying flat. So I decided to remove that bottom piece that like crosses over that score line. And then I just have like a mat for that middle section where when you open up the card base. But if anyone has any tips on how to avoid your paper from like bubbling up or like crinkling up when you're layering a mat that's gonna like cross over score lines, or you know, that's gonna get folded, please share any tips like in the comments. I would love to know. I'm sure there's like a solution to this issue. I just wasn't sure. So since my mat only covered the middle section, then I decided to add a mat using like pattern paper to the bottom section of the inside of the card. And then I also just added some stamps and like a little envelope style or envelope seal kind of sticker. And you know, there was some trial and error, of course, with this style card, but I think it turned out so cute, and I just love the idea of an envelope shaped card for whatever reason. The last card is another gatefold style card. So for this one, for the card base, you're going to need a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches, which you'll score at 2 1/8 inches on both ends on the 8.5 inch side. So you'll end up with a gatefold style A2 size card. And you'll also need 2 pieces that measure 1 3/4 by 5 1/8 inches, and 2 pieces that measure 1 1/8 by 4.5 inches. So now my goal was to make this card look like a front door. So just choose your colors accordingly if you decide to make this card. So I stamped a sentiment, which ended up measuring 3 3/4 wide by 1 1/4 inches tall. And then I also punched out a 2-inch circle, which I turn into like a Christmas wreath by folding it. I just fold it in half, and then I take my smaller 1-inch circle punch and make like a small punch in the middle, as you'll see. But yeah, this again is just another like really simple card to put together. You may have like a die cutting machine or like a die to make a wreath, or maybe even like maybe you have some stickers that are wreaths. So just use whatever you have. I had a little bit of ribbon to mine too, and I tie a bow. Now when you glue down the sentiment and the wreath to your card front, just be sure you only add adhesive to the one side. So like in this case, I believe I attached them to the left side of my card front, and I used foam tape. So I just have my tape on the left side, you know, that's going to touch that left panel. Now I ended up adding some mats to the inside of this card as well, but then that was it. So here's a closer look at all 11 cards, and I decided to try to rank them from my like least favorite to most favorite. So like an 11th place to first place, which was really hard, and I probably like would change my mind any given day. But at number 11, I have this Scenic middle fold style card. I really should have come up with some better names for all these. But number 10 is the simple top folding gatefold card. Number 9 is the twist easel card. I do really like this one, but the one thing I don't quite care for is that you have that crease on the front of the card, but it's really meant to be displayed in the easel form anyways. But number 8 is this kind of like envelope style pocket card. I just love the Winnie the Pooh Christmas paper. Number 7 is this simple gatefold card using the 3x4 cut apart. Probably one of the most simple designs I did, but I tend to gravitate towards simple, plus this paper is just gorgeous. Number 6 is actually the same gatefold style card, but where I added the little Christmas tree cutout, which I really do love. Number 5 is this envelope card, which even though I made some mistakes, I think the style card is just adorable. You can write out like who the card is to, like a letter on the back, and then they open it like an envelope to a cute little Christmas greeting. So cute. Now number 4 is the front door gatefold card with the cute little Christmas wreath I made using the circle punches. Now coming in at number 3 is the stacked Christmas presents card, which would also make a great birthday card as well, and you can write an additional message on the back of this one. Coming in at number 2 is the buckle style card, I think it's called. This is one that was inspired by a card I saw on Pinterest, and I just really like using layouts where you get to see both sides of your double-sided pattern paper, so I just think this one turned out really beautiful. And coming in at number 1 is the Bookmark card. Now, it might just be this beautiful paper too, but I love the fact that there aren't many embellishments at all. You just get to enjoy the beautiful paper. Plus, of course, the added bookmark is just adorable. I will definitely continue to make these style cards. I would love to know if you have any favorites out of these 11 designs. Thank you so much for watching. I'll have my playlist for the series linked in my description box. Tomorrow's going to be the last video of the series, so stay cozy and I'll see you then. Bye.